Welcome to the Pathway Podcast, an experimental show designed to explore new pathways to student success in higher education. I'm Austin Hostetter. I'm the Assistant Director of the Center for Professional Selling and a lecturer of marketing at Ball State University, and I'll be your host for the next few episodes. I created this podcast with the hope of having conversations around the complexities of higher education and the increasingly complex journeys many students take towards completing their degrees. I'm currently completing my own Doctor of Education degree at Ball State, and this semester I'm specifically looking at the roles community colleges play in the larger higher education ecosystem. Although 1/3 of college students attend community college in some capacity, many still view community college as a second tier of education under four-year universities. Through conversations with higher education professionals, I hope to use this podcast as a way to start changing those perceptions. Perhaps fittingly, my first conversation is with Chris Wilkey, the director of the Center for Professional Selling and a fellow lecturer of marketing at Ball State. Chris is sort of a higher education guru. He got his start in teaching as an adjunct faculty member at Ivy Tech while he was still working full-time in marketing and sales. Eventually, he returned to his alma mater at Ball State to work in the foundation, and quickly moved to a position in housing and residence life. Currently, he leads the sales center in the College of Business, where he works closely with professionals who hope to hire marketing and sales students and coordinates many student service opportunities to connect students with those employers. As a quick side note, Chris and I go way back. Besides working closely in the sales center and both as lecturers at Ball State, we were college roommates in undergrad. We were both part of the second class to complete the Miller Scholar program at Ball State, and we both worked together in our marketing careers before we transitioned into higher education. So, lots of history before you get into this conversation. Here's our conversation exploring community college opportunities in Indiana, how they play into the larger higher education ecosystem, and what more can be done to promote community college as a viable path for students. It seems appropriate to have you, Chris Wilkey, join for this first episode. You have kind of a bizarre mix of experience. You've done a lot of different things in the higher education space. You now are the director of the Center for Professional Selling at Ball State. You also teach marketing and sales courses, but before that, you worked in housing and residence life. You worked for the foundation. You taught at Ivy Tech for a while. You were teaching remedial math. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. I got to basically be like a tutoring course for the students who didn't pass the entrance placement test at a certain level.
Okay. And you've also gone through the EDD program here at Ball State, which has given you also, from an academic standpoint, a pretty thorough understanding of higher ed. So all in all, just a broad mix of higher education experience within issues in higher education, and an understanding of how community colleges sort of fit within the broader context of higher education within Indiana.
Yeah, I mean, the first class I ever took for a college class was from Ivy Tech, and it was a Marketing 200 class that I won a scholarship to. They had an old program called Take a Course on Us. It was called Taco U. It was their abbreviation, and what it is as a senior in high school, Ivy Tech would let you take, or as a junior and a senior, they'd let you take one class to see if you liked college.
I did not know that existed.
So I took that, and then with Business Professionals of America, got a scholarship for winning in desktop publishing. Starting to age myself when you start saying desktop publishing. But got a full ride for a year at Ivy Tech, so I took all of my accounting classes online through Blackboard at Ivy Tech as a senior in high school.
Okay. Did not realize that. By the time I met you freshman year here, undergrad at Ball State, I guess that makes sense, understanding all the information you came into freshman year with, but did not realize that at the time.
That's why I was in an accounting class with you.
That makes total sense. You got lucky there. So just going back to the years you were teaching at Ivy Tech, you were doing other things in marketing as well, but what was that experience like for you? What were the students you were coming across? Did you get an understanding of what their lives were like, what their experiences were like, what they were doing at Ivy Tech. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so I taught the remedial math, which is like it was a math 0 or it was 080, I think is what the class was. But I also taught like an Ivy class, which was like how to be a student, which was an interesting class. I only taught that for a semester, and in addition, they had me tutor in the like learning center for on the math side of things. They basically were very short staffed on people with math, and I hopped in. I was like, sure, my econ classes technically qualify as math classes, so I started doing that. And teaching, it was an odd group of students. I've got I think in that class I had about 20 students, and I can still remember some of them, and they weren't they were like everyday people. But the problem was they just had never been taught math the appropriate way. And it wasn't that they were dumb. Like they literally, some of them, I can tell you, one of them works at a Citizen State Bank in Newcastle and is the branch manager. And he was in my math class, which scares the crap out of me that I'm the one who taught him the math. But he finally learned how to handle all of the decimals and fractions. And it was basic algebra that we were having trouble with. And the problem we saw was the students, they had a teacher who didn't know how to teach them well. So they would come to me and ask questions, and we'd basically start turning this stuff into real world things they actually already knew. And once it clicked, it clicked. And I've seen some of them past this. I've seen 4 or 5 of them in the community or other things. I'm like, hey, remember me from class? So that was the one class. And then I taught another one. And I think I had an inmate at the local jail that was in the class because like the cops would come with him. It was always really fascinating. And then one other student within that class. It was just me with those two helping them do it. And we did it in the Patterson building in downtown Muncie. So I had 2 different campuses I was teaching at with different classes. And the students were honestly, I mean, one of them, I remember them bringing their kid into class.
Sure.
And I remember the students who were trying to manage a full-time job, and we were doing like this in a evening class, like mid-afternoon. They were all across the board different, but the community college fit for what they needed at that time.
Kind of knowing those students from that perspective, and now fast forwarding to what you've done at Ball State from housing and residence life, yes, to teaching, but then also the interactions you have with students through the sales center, which you're sort of uniquely positioned to work with students on developing them for careers, getting them ready to be professionals, working with companies to see what skills students need to develop to get hired, what companies are looking for. How do you kind of see the connection of what you were seeing in a school like Ivy Tech, what you were preparing them for, and how that maybe should exist or currently exists within the broader higher education ecosystem?
Well, I think of those students, if they would have came in here, say they would have came to Ball State, some of the students would have not made it past the first 6 weeks. There had been no way in the world. The class structure that we have here, the time the classes are offered, the different departments you have across campus, just scheduling classes was difficult. So I think that it definitely serves a point. Like if I was a working professional, there'd be no way I could go to Ball State and hope that I would get it if I couldn't get it onto an online class. So community college served a very unique thing, and I can probably guarantee that those students wouldn't have made it in a math class here. And
I barely made it in the math classes here.
yeah, I mean, I remember my guy teaching it, and I was strong in math, so it was okay, but like there was no way. But at the same time, for what they were trying to do, they don't need to know derivatives and like correlations and all that different stuff. Ivy Tech provided actual like real world application stuff. If you talk to any of my employers that we speak with on a regular basis, they need you to have enough math or English or communication skills to do the job. They will teach you everything else. So what ends up happening is the students that want to kind of better themselves in a thing that couldn't go into a traditional 4-year university, community college is great for it. And it's probably better than what we could offer in executive ed or like lifetime learning. It takes forever to get anything done at Ball State. Like if you want to make an academic program change, I know you and I have done this. It's like a 3 or 4 year process.
Sure.
Ivy Tech can throw up a class next week that hits the demands for a specific company in the industry. I wish we could do that here. So I think they actually have a really good space. And I bet that most of my partners would actually probably prefer to hire from Ivy Tech because they have a little bit of grit and the dedication, and they're making it work in the situation that they're in.
Well, that leads me to my next question, which I guess there's two sides to this. Do you think from the sales center, do you get the impression that some of the partner companies are actively recruiting and looking at community colleges like Ivy Tech? And on the flip side, do you think students are getting an appropriate perception of what community college can offer them prior to applying for colleges?
I mean, you really think about it, community college probably, from my experience, has kind of a negative connotation. Oh, you're just going to a community college. But that's not the case at all. Like, I mean, having taken the classes, the rigor is the same. I mean, they're literally just a more flexible, adaptable option. And I look at our employers, they probably have some issues with that because I know that they're looking for a 4-year degree from a specific institution. They got the liberal arts side that they're taking those core curriculum classes, and I know there's value to them. But honestly, when a push comes to shove, most of them need a certain person to do a specific job. That's what it is, and that's where the fluff is cut out at the community college. They don't do the big grand, like you're taking humanities courses. No, you need to take an accounting course, you need to take an econ course, you need to take a marketing course.
For sure.
And it's more streamlined because they're taking that fluff out. Now, there's some great developmental stuff that happens when you're exposed in the humanities and through those core curriculum. But at the same time, someone that's working, maybe have kids at home or is trying to adapt or maybe not be the strongest test taker, why the heck do they need that stuff? So I think there's a very good niche, and I would be willing to bet that my employers that I work with are missing out on those students.
Yeah.
You look at our University Sales Center Alliance, you have to be a university. And community college doesn't even count in there in terms of that. I mean, you have some fancy stuff over in California going on, so technically there are some community colleges there, but I don't know why they don't directly work with them on that.
It definitely seems, in particular, for what a lot of the employers we work with need, it seems like a wide gap for them that they aren't doing more work with schools like Ivy Tech because there's a lot of potential there. So going back to, now that I'm learning about the classes that you took at Ivy Tech, which I don't know how I didn't know that, or maybe I just forgot that at some point in our long storied history together, looking at kind of both of our paths into Ball State as undergrads, correct me if I'm wrong, we were both first-gen students.
Technically, my mom she had gotten an associate's degree from Ivy Tech.
Okay.
And she was taking classes about the same time at Ball State for her bachelor's, a little bit later.
So that might be the difference here, and this is where the question's at, because I never considered a community college as an option or trying to take some credit at Ivy Tech before jumping into Ball State. And I was a good student, but there probably would have been some benefit in getting me adjusted to a 4-year university. It was definitely a rough adjustment academically for me. Socially, I thrived, but academically, it took me a little while, in particular freshman year, to kind of figure out what was expected of me from, a rigor standpoint, and then also just how to get study habits down, how to adjust with time management. And there probably was a benefit for me to maybe explore some college level classes at a community college prior to coming into a school like Ball State. So how did you discover those opportunities as a high school student? What sort of led you to finding those and taking advantage of those? Because for me, I was not aware any of that existed. And perhaps that was just a blind spot because my parents weren't really up on that stuff. I didn't get a lot of guidance from them. Where did that information come from?
I think we had a guidance counselor talk about the program, and it was the Take a Course on Us that started it. I decided I was trying to figure out what I wanted to go to school for. And it was, I don't know, a lot of different things, and I decided to take that marketing class because what the heck. Didn't transfer over to Ball State. Well, it did. It just was 3 credit hours that weren't counted for anything. And that was the first attempt. I was giving that a try. Same time, IUPUI, over that summer, did a intensive 2-week college credit, 6 credit hour entrepreneurship course that we did at the Danielson Learning Center in Newcastle. And I was with a bunch of classmates. They basically fed us every day. We built a business plan and kind of were going to launch this business within that local community. Didn't end up taking the credits for that because I didn't want to pay the additional for it. So then with BPA, the scholarship, what ended up happening, and I'll be 100% honest, I didn't want to take the hard accounting classes.
That's fair.
But then I actually figured after knowing what you guys did and knowing what I did in the classes, I probably had a little bit more rigor in what I had to do online than what we were learning at Ball State. So I took both of those and I had a pretty good understanding of what I needed to do. My mom had taken classes with the lady before. So she kind of said, well, maybe you should take this. You don't know what you want to do. Eliminate accounting. Figure out that you do or don't want to do it. In worst case, you've taken those classes and they'll transfer in. It'll give you some more flexibility down the line. I'm glad I did. I ended up taking a scuba diving class because I had the extra credit hours.
Of course, I remember that scuba diving class.
But like it gave me the flexibility. And I know like right now in the Newcastle community school systems in the area I live at, they're launching a whole like business cognate, not a cognate, but like a track. It's a career track. And they're going to be working in like Ivy Tech is teaching in the high school level to do it. So like they have one lady who's actually going to be teaching curriculum and they have them mapped across and they're going to start prepping the students and they're hoping that the students come in with like 15 credit hours of community college credit so they can hit the ground running when they come into the university.
Sure. And that kind of leads into my final question is, with the perspective that you have from the EDD program, from everything that you've done at the university level, do you see more opportunities for collaboration between the high schools, Ivy Tech, the four-year universities to give students more options and more opportunities, given that access to education is getting more difficult, particularly in Indiana. It's getting increasingly expensive. We need to be more flexible and provide different pathways for different students depending on their circumstances. Is there more that should be done in terms of collaboration between all the different players?
So like, for instance, how I think of it is if I had a student come in here and I can think of one in particular that I have. I know her name. Her name's Aisha. She's in my sales class. I don't give two craps who taught her how to do communication, writing, or anything else. I just need her to have had those skills. So if that's going to be integrated into the high school level and it can be done with enough rigor and enough intentionality, great. I still don't think the students are ready for college at that point yet. There's something that happens when they go away to either a classroom that's not mandated by the state to be put in, and there's something to be said when you come up to campus. Ball State experience is not the classroom. It's just part of that. There's the overarching, you're living here as in the residence halls, you're experiencing, you're building your network. I don't think you can replicate that at the community college, but the community college can be the cheaper option to get some of the education that is needed to prepare them to be ready to go experience that. And I'm not saying you cut a 4-year degree to 2 years by any means, but it could be argued that there should be some tying together at the high school, community college, and the university level. If you're trying to reduce cost, take 2 years out of it.
Sure.
Reduce it to a lower cost method of doing that, integrate it into the high schools or get them at least prepped, and then let us take them and finish off with the employer side of things. I don't think a community college right now has a strong enough sales program to train.
For sure.
So if it's not there, that's where we come in and have that program and the distinction around that. But I don't think there's anything bad with the courses that are being taught. I think it's probably the most underutilized asset for most of the students here.
Yeah.
When they're looking at it.
And in the meantime, students have the ability to take those 2 years to start to consider what it is they actually want to study and what they actually want to do. I didn't have any idea until junior year what I was going to be doing. I really still didn't have much of an idea in junior year. I just sort of picked a major, but in those 2 years, students may find an associate's degree is perfectly acceptable for what they want out of a career. It gives them a little more flexibility than immediately jumping into a 4-year degree, coming to a 4-year university. There's just maybe perhaps a little more flexibility there, giving them that stepping stone into a 4-year program.
I mean, you look at our business college, our retention rate's like 87%. There's 13% of the students that this wasn't right for.
Yeah.
And that is over the first 6 weeks. I mean, you could do something creative where they come in here, they drop out, and we put them into a program at an Ivy Tech where it does a mid-semester class to get them so they don't lose track. They may go and finish their associate's degree there and then bounce back over when they're a little bit more prepared to do that. I think there's a lot of stuff, and I know money is the driver of most things in enrollment, but being more collaborative would actually benefit everybody involved.
For sure.
But no one, I mean, you think of the bureaucracy we have to go through here at Ball State to get something like that done. It'd be insane.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a lot of players, including the state, that's going to control a lot of this. And then obviously what it takes to get things, structural things like that changed at the university level.
yeah, I mean, we have students, I was just looking at some that are working with some of the freshmen. They don't know how to schedule classes. They don't know what, like, they're terrified to take an econ class. They could have easily gotten a prep class done at Ivy Tech, gotten some credit under themselves, been able to see if this is what they want to do instead of taking a class here and being terrified.
Sure.
So there's some stuff I think they can do. Am I the one that's going to do it? Probably not. But there's some smart people out there. If they start figuring out how to collaborate, would probably be very beneficial for everybody involved.
If there's anything I've learned is somehow you end up getting involved in just about everything that goes on here. So there's a good chance you will end up helping out with it in some way or another. But
yeah, you never know.
well, I appreciate this. Thank you so much for taking the time, sharing your thoughts. Always good to chat. If you want to hear more conversations like this one I just had with Chris, I'd encourage you to subscribe and stay tuned for future episodes. I'd also encourage you to seek out additional resources concerning community colleges in the state of Indiana and more broadly in our nation as a whole. Start to educate yourself on the opportunities that community colleges can offer all different types of students to begin to understand how community colleges can play a more important role in our larger higher education ecosystem. If you want to seek out some of these resources, you can check out the Pathways website, which will be linked in the description on this video. I'm Austin Hostetter. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and look forward to chatting more with you soon.